Hello, my name is Karthik. I'm a PhD candidate at the Indian Institute of Science. This is a presentation of the work that was carried out jointly with my PhD supervisor, Professor Rajesh Sundaresan, that has been accepted into ISIT 2021. This work was supported by the Science and Engineering Research Board of the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. The motivation for our work comes from the desire to carry out a detailed mathematical analysis of the following visual search experiment. Among the 8 batches of drifting dots movies that are shown here, one of the movies is different from the rest, and the goal is to identify this odd movie as quickly and accurately as possible. As it can be seen, the circled movie is the odd one. The angle at which the dots in this movie drift is different from the angle at which the dots in the other movies drift. Let us consider one more such example. Again, the goal here is to identify the odd movie as quickly and accurately as possible. Perhaps most of you took more time to identify the odd movie in this case, and perhaps found this example more difficult than the previous one. One may therefore hypothesize that closer the drifts of the odd movie and the non-odd movies are, the harder the problem instance is, and therefore the longer it takes to find the odd movie. Can this inverse relationship be captured precisely in a mathematical form? In our paper, we show that the answer is yes. Noting that each drifting dots movie is simply a sequence of frames over time, one can draw a parallel between multi-arm bandits and the odd movie experiments we saw previously. A movie is like an arm. A frame is like an observation. Note that the positions of the dots in any 2 successive frames of a movie are dependent on each other. This can be captured by saying that the observations from any given arm form a Markov process. Observing a movie is like selecting an arm. Even though our eyes tend to fixate on one movie at any given time, the unobserved movies continue to play. This in multi-arm bandits is known as the setting of restless arms. The dots in one of the movies drifting at a different angle can be captured by saying that the transition probability matrix of one of the arms is different. The objective is to find the odd restless Markov arm as quickly and accurately as possible without having prior knowledge of the TPMs of the arms. Because the TPMs are not known beforehand, they must be learned along the way. Here is a quick demonstration of the sampling of the arms and the collection of the observations from the arms. Suppose we have a multi-arm bandit with 4 arms in which arm 3 is the odd arm, P1 is the TPM of the odd arm, and P2 is the TPM of each non-odd arm. In the next slide, we are going to give this model a name. We shall call it an arms configuration. Of course, the decision entity that wishes to find the odd arm does not know the arms configuration. Let's say, to begin with, each of the arms is sampled once, and the observations from these arms are as shown here. Notice how the observation from arm 2 has the subscript 1, indicating that it is the observation corresponding to time t equal to 1. Similarly, the observation from arm 3 has the subscript 2, indicating that it is the observation corresponding to time t equal to 2. After sampling each of the arms once, one can write down the delay of each arm and the last observed state of each arm. For example, at time t equal to 4, the delay of arm 1 is 4, indicating that it was last sampled 4 time instants ago, that is at time t equal to 0. Similarly, the delay of arm 2 at time t equal to 4 is 3, indicating that it was last sampled 3 time instants ago, that is at time t equal to 1. Also, one can write down the last observed state of each arm. For example, at time t equal to 4, the last observed state of arm 1 is x01. That of arm 2 is x12, and so on. If arm 3 is selected at time t equal to 4, then the delays in the last observed states change as shown here. The delays of the unobserved arms increment by 1. The last observed states of the unobserved arms remain unchanged. The delay of the selected arm becomes 1, and its last observed state is updated accordingly. In this way, the arm selections and the updating of the arm delays and the last observed states will continue until the decision entity is sufficiently confident of which arm is the odd arm. We now formally state the main objective of our paper. Let pi be any policy and C be an arms configuration in which H is the odd arm, P1 is the TPM of the odd arm, and P2 is the TPM of each non-odd arm. We are going to give this triplet a name. We shall call it an arms configuration. Recall the picture shown on the previous slide. For the policy pi, Let tau pi denote the time it takes to find the odd arm, and let its decision inaccuracy be quantified by its error probability. For an error probability threshold epsilon, let us define pi epsilon to be the collection of all policies whose error probability is at most epsilon. Our interest is to identify the odd arm quickly and accurately. One may guess that smaller the value of epsilon, the larger the time required to find the odd arm with an error probability of at most epsilon. An examination of the prior works reveals that the quantity in red is of the order log 1 over epsilon in the limit as epsilon goes to 0. Our objective in this paper is to characterize the asymptotic growth rate of the expected time required to find the odd arm when the asymptotic is as the error probability vanishes. Before we proceed further, we introduce the notion of a trembling hand. Often in visual search experiments, although the subject participating in the experiment intends to focus his or her attention at a certain location, the actual focus location differs from the intended focus location with a small probability. We model this phenomenon in our problem in the form of a trembling hand. Suppose BT is the intended focus location at time t and AT is the actual focus location at time t. Then, according to our trembling hand model, AT and BT are equal to each other with probability 1 minus eta, and AT is uniformly randomly chosen with probability eta. Here, eta is a fixed constant known as the trembling hand parameter. Throughout our paper, we keep eta fixed and assume that it is strictly positive. Recall this picture shown earlier. Writing dt to denote the vector of arm delays and it to denote the vector of last observed states of the arms, it can be seen that the history of all the intended arm selections, actual arm selections, and observations obtained up to a certain time can equivalently be described in terms of the intended arm selections and the delays in the last observed states computed up to that time. The convention we use here is that based on the history up to time t, arm bt is selected. Thereafter, the delays in the last observed states for time t plus 1 are accordingly computed. This process is repeated until stoppage. As you may have already guessed by looking at this chain, the process dtit is a controlled Markov process with bt's playing the role of the controls. Mathematically, this simply means that dt plus 1 it plus 1 is independent of the history up to time t given the control bt, and this holds for all time t. We therefore have a Markov decision problem whose state space is the space of all delays and last observed states. Action space is the set of arms. The state at time t is dtit. The action or control at time t is pt. However, our objective is not to maximize rewards or minimize regret as is typical in MDPs, but to characterize the asymptotic growth rate of the expected time to find the odd arm. Let us now look at the transition probabilities of the MDP. Suppose that at time t, dt and it are as shown here. Recall that in the notation for dt, arm 1 was sampled at time t minus 4, arm 2 was sampled at time t minus 3, and so on. Suppose that bt now is equal to b, but due to the trembling hand, the actual arm selected is, let's say, at equal to 1. At and bt are probabilistically related as shown here. Then the new vector of arm delays at time t plus 1 and the new vector of last observed states are accordingly updated as shown here. Notice how the delay of arm 1 has been set to 1 and that of the other arms have been incremented by 1. The new vector of last observed states of the arms also has been updated to reflect that xt plus 1 is the last observed state of arm 1, while the last observed states of the other arms have been kept unchanged. Thus, the probability of the MDP making a transition from the state di to the state d prime I prime is as given in this expression. Notice the presence of the TPM-P2 in this expression. As another example, suppose that bt plus 1 is b prime, but due to trembling, the actual arm selected is at plus 1 equal to 3. Then dt plus 2 and it plus 2 are as shown here. The probability of the MDP making a transition from the state d prime I prime at t plus 1 to d double prime I double prime at t plus 2 are as given by the following expression. Notice the presence of the TPM-P1 in this expression. In summary, it can be seen that the MDP transition probabilities depend on the arms configuration. We may say that the MDP transition probabilities are parameterized by the arms configuration. Notice that the value of the true parameter is unknown and must be learned. This is very popularly known in the literature on MDPs as the problem of parameter identification or identifiability. Also, notice how the set of all possible parameters is uncountably infinite. This is because the TPMs can take uncountably many values. As we shall see, resolving the identification problem for the MDP that was described earlier shall form the key challenge in our work. Before moving on to describe the results of our paper, we define what an SRS policy is. We say that a policy pi is a stationary randomized strategy, or SRS policy in short, if there exists lambda such that at any given time t, bt is picked based only on the current state dtit according to the probability distribution lambda. Here lambda is a conditional probability distribution on the arms conditioned on the arm delays and the last observed states of the arms. Such an SRS policy pi associated with the lambda will be denoted explicitly as pi lambda. Let pi SRS denote the collection of all SRS policies. As we shall see, SRS policies will play an important role in all of our results. We are now ready to present the first main result of our paper. Recall that our interest is to quantify the asymptotic growth rate of the expected time required to find the odd arm, where the asymptotics is as the error probability vanishes. A lower bound on the expected time to find the odd arm is as shown here. Here, R star is a problem instance dependent constant that captures the hardness of the problem. For example, in the case of the odd movie experiments we saw earlier, the closer the drifts of the odd movie and the non-odd movies are, the smaller would be the value of R star, and therefore the longer it would take on the average to find the odd arm. The exact expression for R star can be found in our paper. However, we note here that the expression for R star is of this form, where the supremum is over all SRS policies. Also, the function f contains in it relative entropies between the corresponding rows of the powers of the TPMs P1 and P2. Having said this, we note that the computability of the supremum in the expression for R star is an issue because it involves a search over the space of all SRS policies. An algorithm like Q-learning may need to be employed to compute R star. Also, it is not clear if the supremum in the expression for R star is attained by some SRS policy, but any value smaller than the supremum is attainable. In particular, given any delta strictly positive and an arms configuration HP1, P2, we know that there exists a lambda that is in general a function of both delta and the arms configuration such that the value of f evaluated for this lambda is at least R star by 1 plus delta. We shall refer to such a lambda as a delta optimal solution for the configuration C. Notice that for each arms configuration, there may be more than one delta optimal solution in general. Let us fix a delta positive. On the left is a depiction of the set of all possible arms configurations, and on the right is the set of all possible delta optimal solutions. For the arm configuration HP1, P2, let's say lambda HP1, P2 is one of the many possible delta optimal solutions. Similarly, for another configuration H prime, P prime, Q prime, let's say lambda H prime, P prime, Q prime delta is one of the many delta optimal solutions, and so on. We thus get a selection of delta optimal solutions, one for each arms configuration. One desirable property we would like such a selection of delta optimal solutions to satisfy is that when the parameters converge, the corresponding delta optimal solutions also converge. However, it is not clear this property holds in general. Therefore, in order to carry out analysis, we assume that the problem admits a continuous selection of delta optimal solutions. Further, in order to show achievability, we impose another regularity condition on the TPMs, which can be described as follows. Given a constant epsilon bar star lying between 0 and 1, let P of epsilon bar star denote the collection of all ergodic TPMs, the non-zero entries of whose powers are bigger than or equal to epsilon bar star. Our regularity assumption on the TPMs is that there exists such an epsilon bar star that lies strictly between 0 and 1, such that given any arms configuration, the TPMs of the arms configuration belong to P of epsilon bar star. Notice that if P and Q belong to P of epsilon bar star, they are less separated from one another than otherwise, in the sense that the relative entropies of the corresponding rows of P and Q are bounded by utmost logarithm of 1 by epsilon bar star. Therefore, an assumption such as this on the TPMs only makes the problem of identifying the odd arm more difficult. We demonstrate achievability under these assumptions. The arm selection policy using which we demonstrate achievability is called pi star L delta. Here, L and delta are parameters of the policy. Our policy may be described as follows. First, we sample each of the arms once. For all n bigger than or equal to k, we compute the ML estimates of the TPMs. We maintain a guess of the odd arm denoted here as h hat of n. If the statistic corresponding to the guess arm exceeds a fixed threshold, we stop and declare the current estimate of the odd arm as the true odd arm. Else, we assume that the estimated configuration is indeed the true configuration, and we sample the next arm according to the delta optimal solution for the estimated configuration. This is popularly known in the literature as the principle of certainty equivalence. In summary, our policy uses the principle of certainty equivalence with ML estimation. Notice how our policy does not require to know the value of epsilon bar star from assumption 2 shown on the previous slide. We show in our paper that under the assumptions stated earlier, the parameter estimates or the estimates of the arms configurations converge to their true values, thus resolving the problem of identification. Our policy satisfies the desired error probability for a suitable choice of the parameter L. Also, our policy satisfies an upper bound that matches with the lower bound asymptotically. In combination with the lower bound, this proves that our policy is asymptotically optimal. In summary, our approach towards achieving the lower bound is as follows. We maintain an estimate of the unknown arms configuration at each time instant. We select the next arm, assuming that the estimated configuration is indeed the true configuration. This is popularly known in the literature as the principle of certainty equivalence. In order to achieve the lower bound, it is very crucial that our estimates converge to their true values. We demonstrate that when the estimates are computed using the principle of maximum likelihood estimation, this convergence is possible under a continuous selection assumption and a regularity assumption on the TPMs. Putting all these ideas together, we devise a policy called pi star L delta and show that pi star satisfies the desired error probability and achieves an upper bound that matches with the lower bound under the earlier stated assumptions. In summary, we derived a lower bound on the expected time to find the odd arm. We devised a policy based on the principle of certainty equivalence with maximum likelihood estimation and showed that it achieves the lower bound asymptotically. Combining the upper and the lower bounds, the main result of our paper is as shown at the top of this slide. The key challenge in the analysis is resolving the parameter identification problem in the context of a certain countable state MDP, which we accomplish under a continuous selection assumption and a regularity assumption on the TPMs. We work with the case when the trembling hand parameter eta is strictly positive. It would be interesting to study the case when eta is actually equal to 0. It so happens that in our work, the ML estimates cannot be computed in closed form. They can at best be computed numerically. Why then stick to ML estimation in spite of its computational intractability? Why not use a simple policy that samples the arms repeatedly to estimate the TPMs? We answer these questions in detail and justify the utility of our approach in the full version of our paper, the archive link to which is provided here. Here are a few acknowledgements. Thank you.